In tonight's Veterans Voices, living history was in the spotlight recently on a popular local radio show. Two men who fought in World War II, each more than 100 years old, talking about their near-death experiences on the field of battle. They each recalled what it took to get through such fierce fighting and why we all need to appreciate life one day at a time.
This is the Bob Cordaro Show.
It was a very special panel on a recent Bob Cordaro show on WILK News Radio, and a rare one. Two veterans of World War II alive and well. There are very few left in Pennsylvania, but Tony Julian and Charlie Tansits were ready to chat.
We had to stay up front. We were attached to a rifle platoon.
Julian, who was a lifelong Scranton man, was with the Marine Corps and participated in 4 amphibious assaults, one on Iwo Jima in the Pacific. Many of his fellow Marines did not make it out alive. At one point, he was shot by a sniper and says shock took over. He doesn't recall how he got up off the ground.
Shocked. When you get hit, I knew I got hit, but I didn't know what part of my body got hit.
Yeah.
So they come up and they got me out of there, and they took me to a hospital ship. And close fighting, hand to hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how I survived it, honestly, God.
Tansits, another lifelong resident of the Electric City, was an Army medic and was drafted in 1942. He served under General Patton's army at the Battle of the Bulge, the largest and single bloodiest battle of the war. Tansits was sarcastic and brief when he was asked about serving under Patton.
You didn't think much of George Patton.
Well, no, there's our blood in his guts. That's the way we looked at it.
He also had some sage advice for anyone, old or young, about how to live life to the fullest.
My advice to anybody living today, if you're going to do something, do it now. If you're going to live it up now. Don't save nothing for the end.
Well, that's great advice, right? Now, Tony Julian's bravery in World War II earned him a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. Friends of the Poor are announcing plans for the 46th annual...
With you two characters, we have enough. We have enough to talk about.
Are we done back?
Well, we're going where they're on air at the moment, but we'll wait.
Run, Tony.
He was also in the Pacific.
Oh, yeah?
But he was on the USS Saratoga, but he got ill yesterday. Something happened, so we got both of you.
Who's that guy here?
Hey, Tony.
What's up, buddy?
Why didn't you tell me you were coming?
Did I tell you? I told everybody else.
All right, we're gonna... Larry, hold him for one moment, because I'm gonna open this door.
You were at the Battle of the Bulge?
Yes, it was.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations for what?
For doing everything you did for this country.
Northeast PA's News Radio, WILK.
Great good afternoon, everyone. It is noontime in Northeast PA, Monday, August 22nd, 2022. This is the Bob Cordaro Show, and I am he. It's a big day. Not only to fight for America, defend our values, and honor the brave who have made us and kept us free, but we've got two World War II veterans, centenarians, Charlie Tansits, U.S. Army, East Mountain Section of Scranton, and Tony Julian, U.S. Marine Corps, also from Scranton, 100 years young as of July, and we honor them today. So with history, our great founding fathers, and the incomparable Constitution of the United States of America as our guides, let us begin today's battle. Well, Tom Tansits brought in my dear friend Charlie Tansits. He was a U.S. Army medic. He is from the East Mountain Section of Scranton. He was with Patton's Army in the Battle of the Bulge. And then my other friend Larry Nicholas brought in 100-year-old Tony Julian, U.S. Marine Corps medic. He fought on Iwo Jima, landing 4 times. Shot by a sniper, but he survived. He delivered the mail for us for many years. He's from Scranton as well. Unfortunately, we had George Partash from Sugar Notch was going to come on today. He got ill yesterday, but we hope to have him on the future. He was a hydraulic specialist on the USS Saratoga aircraft carrier. He manned the pumps on a ship that took 5 direct hits from kamikaze pilots in an attack that killed 123 Americans. He wounded 192 and destroyed 36 aircraft. We honor him today as well. Gentlemen, I don't know how you're hearing me, but I want to say hello first to Charlie Tansits. How are you, Charlie?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Now, I said, first of all, nothing. And Tony Julian, it's great to talk to you and see you again.
Nice to see you, Bob.
I'll tell you. Now, both of you guys saw some incredible things. We're not going to just talk about the war today. We want to talk about your lives, the things you've seen, the things you've experienced. But we'll start off with the war. Charlie, you were a medic.
Yeah.
With Patton's army.
Yeah, you're going to start out with the war. Let's end it there. Let's talk about walking around the lake.
You're always hesitant, I know.
Yeah.
But I know that you had mentioned to me, well, a couple of things that I thought were very funny. You didn't think much of George Patton.
Well, no, it was our blood and his guts. That's the way we looked at it.
Tell us, how did you enlist or were drafted in World War II?
I didn't enlist. I was drafted. I was pulled in. If I had to do it over, to do it again. Let's talk around the lake.
and Tony, how about yourself? How did you come to join the Marine Corps?
Well, I didn't want to go in the Army, so I volunteered for the Navy. Once I got in the Navy, I didn't like it. They sent me to medical school, and I didn't like that. They sent me to a hospital to take care of the wounded from World War I. And it was working on bedpans and stuff like that. So I went to medical school in Portsmouth, Virginia. From there, I didn't like that. So I went to the captain. I said, I don't like this duty. He said, well, we sent you to school. It costs a lot of money. He said, we got to keep you in the medical field. I said, okay. He said, do you like to work outside? And I said, yeah, I love them. I go pick up mushrooms. He said, well, we'll take care of that. After about a month or two, my name went up on the board to get transferred to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Fort Monroe region was forming. And they put me up there with the fort. I was one of the first guys in the 4th Marine Division. And we start forming the fort down there in New River, North Carolina, Camp Lejeune. And from there, they sent me to, what was it, Hadnot Point, I think it was, yeah. A different part of the Marine Corps. So they said, we got to assign you to something. They said, well, I'll tell you, I like the outdoors. I don't want to go aboard a ship or nothing. I just want to be outdoors. So they sent me down to, where was it? Camp Pendleton out in California. And there they send you to get tested, see what you were best fitted for. You know, what you did and all that. And it came out that with my test, I was best fitted for medical work. So they assigned me to the 4th Marine Division. That was the biggest mistake I made. I thought I was going to be on an island or something, and using a cookout, and there I got attached to a rifle platoon. That's one corpsman likes to a rifle platoon. And I should have kept my mouth shut. Anyway, I went through 4 invasions. I'm talking about real combat.
Yeah.
First wave. And what else did I do? Oh, Roy Moore in the Marshall Islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Iwo Jima.
Tell us about those islands. Now, you'd be coming on the LSTs.
No.
How did you land?
In the Marshalls, we did an LST. But they open up in the front, and you get out the door, and I was with a fourth wave on every one of them, right up front with the guys getting wounded and everything. And I want everybody to know, I joined the Navy, but I was never a sailor. They call me a sailor. I had to wait a while. I'm a combat corpsman. I never served any sailors or nothing. We had bad times.
Yeah. The 4 different island landings you were part of, including Iwo Jima.
Yeah.
And you were shot by a Japanese sniper on one of those landings.
Right. On Iwo Jima, I landed on the first wave. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They had Mount Suribachi on the left.
Oh, yeah.
On the right, all the caves there, they were dug in. And what they did, they put all the power on the right, where I landed in the first wave. That's where all the action was. And they were dug in like, you wouldn't believe it. There was an airstrip there. But before we landed, they told us the night before, we had to get a combat position to take in the island. If we didn't move in, they told us they were going to shove us in with their own boys. We needed a position there. So I landed on the first wave. Through the first day. The second day, we had to move in, had to push our drive. And I was dug in by the airport there. We had our, and it was early in the morning. I heard somebody calling for a corpsman. So, the guys with me, they said, you got to be nuts to go out there and take care of them with all the fire going on. But you hear this call, and it sort of gets into you got to go. I went out there, and when I got out there, I got right there to the end of the airstrip, and I got hit by a sniper.
Where did he hit you?
In the lower left leg.
Oh.
And I don't know how I got off, to tell you the truth. It's sort of a short stay, like you sort of getting shocked. When you get hit, I knew I got hit, but I didn't know what part of my body got hit.
Yeah.
So they come up and they got me out of there, and they took me to a hospital ship.
Well, both you and Charlie were corpsmen, and so you saw. All right, I'll ask this question of both of you. We've seen maybe you've seen the movies, between the movies about the Pacific Theater and the movies about the Battle of the Bulge, Charlie. As we continue to talk with Charlie Tansits and Tony Julian. Tony, a U.S. Marine Corps medic. Charlie Tansits, a U.S. Army medic.
Well, I was listening to Tony there. That's very interesting. I learned something. makes the Battle of the Bulge sound like a disturbance. Yeah. Yeah, I talked to Tony about this before, so I knew exactly what he was going to say. Yeah, Tony's right up there. He was a line medic. Yeah, I have all the respect in the world for Tony.
But
So
Tony was there.
yeah. So Tony, you're hit,
yeah.
and you're the medic. Who comes to get you?
Tell you the truth, I don't know what kind of a guy was, black or white. Somebody pulled me out. When the fire went down a little bit, and slowed down, they pulled me out. They took me down to the dock where they had these landing docks. You laid it there, and they came with a stretcher, like half water and half out of stretcher, and then they pulled you out to the hospital ship. And I'll tell you the truth, the first couple of days it was like a nightmare, with all the bodies floating around in the water, and taking guys out and parts of body all over the place. It was terrible. It was a nightmare.
My God.
I still feel the backlash of it.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. We're here today, a very special edition of the Bob Cordaro Show with Charlie Tansits, U.S. Army medic, World War II with Patton's Army, including the Battle of the Bulge, and Tony Julian, U.S. Marine Corps medic in Scranton, who did 4 different island landings, was shot on Iwo Jima. We touched on that. We're going to take this break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk with these great men about maybe the rest of their war experience, because then we want to get into life itself back when they were growing up. We'll take this break and be back on the Bob Cordaro Show. Well, we heard Glenn Miller in The Mood, and now we're hearing Vera Lynn, We'll Meet Again. That's a haunting song referencing when you went over there, you didn't know if you were going to make it back. And I'm sure, Charlie Tansits, there was a lot of guys you had experience with that didn't make it back.
First of all, you had to make it over.
Yeah, which was perilous enough, I guess, right?
Yeah. Took us 5 days to go over.
Where did you embark? In New York or where?
New York City, Pier 52.
Wow. And so it was was it a civilian transport ship or a military?
Queen Mary.
No kidding.
They had the whole division out of Queen Mary.
Oh my gosh.
If it took that down, the whole division would have went down with, plus special troops.
Wow. Do you remember, what year was that?
43.
43. Oh my gosh.
No, 44. 44.
So you took the Queen Mary over. Where did you land in England?
Norwich.
Were there any problems on the way? I mean, U-boat sightings, anything like that?
No. Queen Mary went over. It was zigzagging all the way over. Took us 5 days to go over and 2 weeks to come back on a victory ship.
Wow. So it was full steam ahead, but they were doing a serpentine just in case.
Yeah, we land up in Scotland like at 2 o'clock in the morning. And they came all the way down to England, to Norwich. We were there for 4 weeks, got all new equipment, and then we went to France.
Wow.
We landed in France, D60.
So when you say, and when Charlie says D60, he means 60 days after D-Day. Yeah. And so the whole company assembled, the whole division assembled.
The whole division.
They assembled, and where did you go to after that?
Well, our first encounter was at Avalanche's. I forget where that was. I don't even know what door I came in here. Yeah.
Well, so you have an encounter after what? After a few days on land.
Yeah, maybe 2-3 weeks.
Okay, and how? So you're there, and then the Battle of the Bulge starts.
Oh, that was way down to December.
December of 44.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about that? I know you were telling me some of the things about when you knew that the spit had hit the fan.
Well, we were down almost into Czechoslovakia. We were so far out ahead, we had to come back. because they wouldn't give Patton any more gas. They said we ran out of gas. They didn't run out of gas. They took gas away from them.
Because was that political? If you remember, was that because they didn't want him to go all the way?
That's exactly right. We had plenty of gas, and they just didn't want us to go any further.
Huh.
No.
So you're way out ahead, and then all of a sudden, you're halted because they claim there's no gas, and you said, yeah, there was gas, but all of a sudden, you're realizing that the German forces have amassed, and out of nowhere, they are attacking in what became the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah. Well, we were at Sandoval. I was talking to my brother. Well, he was my brother. He wasn't my brother-in-law then, but he wound up being. I was talking to him at Sandoval on Thanksgiving, and Christmas Day he was killed in the Battle of the Bulge. Yeah. I talked to him Thanksgiving, and Christmas Day after Christmas, he died. Got killed, really.
Well, Charlie, when did you know that the Germans were in the midst of a major offensive? When did you, as a, you're not the frontline troops, but you're the medics behind. You're starting to see casualties coming back to you.
Yes, heavy casualty. No, we were back 5 miles. Yeah, well, whatever.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
And so that's December of 1944, and you proceed on. So, right, we stem that attack, Charlie, and then when did they tell you might be going home?
They never did tell us when we might be going home. That war was over in May, and I didn't get home until December. I was over there 18 months.
Wow. So both in the middle of the fighting and then after the fighting, you were still there.
Yeah.
Tony, so you get injured. You get shot on Iwo Jima. What after you're wounded, you're taken back. Do you get brought onto a ship, or what do they do?
They put us onto a hospital ship. And they took us to the island in Guam, and we got an army hospital or a camp. From there, they start shifting it closer to home, i.e. a Heights Naval Hospital. Then I wound up in where was it, in California? Oh no. Oh, you ever heard of the Naval Hospital?
No.
Oh, it was up in the where the pineapples grew.
Well, all right. So, Tony, when you mentioned 4 island attacks that you participated in, what was the worst? What was the hairiest? Which was the most violent of the landings?
Oh, landing, Iwo Jima was the worst. They were so close to one another. When we hit the beach on Iwo Jima, in the first wave, I saw these Japs coming up out of their caves. And I said to my corporal, I said, geez, I thought we were the first guys on the beach. And he said, we are. Them are Japs. Go for cover.
Oh, Lord.
As soon as I said that, he got whacked in the head. He got killed right away. So then after that, I went, treating so many Marines there the first day. You don't know what was going on. But then where did I go from there? Don't forget, I forgot what I had for breakfast.
No, this is not a history test. This is don't you worry about that one bit.
Okay,
and I'm sure there's things you'd like to forget.
Yeah, but it's things I'd like to tell you too.
Well, all right, guys, we're going to take a break. I'm here with Charlie Tansits, U.S. Army Medic, East Mountain Section of Scranton, and Tony Julian, U.S. Marine Corps Medic, also from Scranton. We'll take this break on a special edition of the Bob Cordaro Show and come back with the weather And then these two great men. Bob Cordaro back with you on WILK. Joined by 102-year-old Charlie Tansits, U.S. Army medic. With Patton's Army, including in the Battle of the Bulge. And we are with Tony Julian, U.S. Marine Corps medic in the Pacific Theater, including Iwo Jima. And I want to thank son-in-law and daughter of Tony Julian for bringing him in. Larry Nicholas is with us today. And Tony and Gargiolo, who started it all, getting him in and telling us about the 100th birthday. And Tom Tansits, who came in with his dad. And I've hung around with both of these guys at different times. Now, before prison, I used to see Tony Julian when I was on the political circuit all the time. And he always just brought a smile to your face and always had a story and all of that. And then I get to know when I was on home confinement, I could only go to Lake Scranton. Well, I run into this salty character, and he would never hesitate to give me hell. And I said, the radio show, whatever, we start talking, and then I found out all about him, and I love it. He's still hesitant to talk about the war, but that's okay, because there's more to talk about. So both of you come home. We win the war. Were there differences in both, at least the way you saw things, when you came back from World War II? Let's start with you, Tony Julian.
Well, when I was getting discharged, I was offered a government job because I had the disability. They put you first on the list. And I worked for Capitol Records like then. And
in South Scranton.
One seniority. I figured I'm going to go back there. I got my seniority. I went back there. Then they went on strike. They moved out of town. I'm out of a job. So I went back to the veterans and got a job at the post office. And that's where I wound up, where I met my wife in Scranton. Mm-hmm. And we went together for about 2 years. Before that, like I told you, there was a sailor in every port. I met this girl, and boy, she was a beauty. She worked at a pharmacy, and I had my Navy uniform on. Tried to make out with her, couldn't make out. Next night, I went there back with the Marine uniform. And I started talking. She said, "Were you with the Marine?" I said, "Yeah." I said, she said, "Well, how come you got both uniforms?" I told her. So we got friendly, and she had a boyfriend that was in the Marines, and he was out in the Pacific. And we kept in touch, and when I come back, guess where I wound up? At Oakland, California, and she was up in Oakland, California. What a coincidence. So I got in touch with her, and we went out to dinner and everything, and she told me her boyfriend got killed
on
Saipan, I think it was, yeah.
One of the islands you were on.
So that was number 2 girlfriend. No matter where I went, there was always somebody waiting for me.
Well, Charlie, you're a handsome guy.
Yeah. Say that again?
You're a handsome guy. Now, did the Army have that kind of experience with the women in every port?
No. And if there was, I wouldn't be telling you about it. No.
Well, you went back now. So when the combat ended, you were still in Germany and that environs. When did you finally go back to England to be transshipped to the United States?
Not until 45, and I left France to come right straight home.
Oh, you left from France? Okay.
Yeah.
Was it an individual or a private ship, or did you go with a group of soldiers?
It was a victory ship.
Wow.
and we rode topside all the way home. The Victory ship is one class higher than a Liberty ship. Those are the ones Kaiser was putting together. One of those Liberty ships you put together one a day, and Victory ships took 2 days.
And so, and the same thing for you, Tony Julian. You knew you survived, and now you're coming home. What was that feeling like?
Well, it was a great feeling. I was in St. Albans Hospital for about 6 months as a patient, getting therapy and all that there. So I went to the doctor, and I said, I want to get out. He said, you feel good enough to get home? I said, yeah. He said, come up to my office. You have to sign a release. I went up to his office. He said, you got to sign this paper that you're okay. He said, you know, you've been in a hospital so long. You got to come out with a pension. I didn't care. I signed it. Guess what? I got out. I got $10 a month for my combat. But that's it. So I signed out, and then I forgot about it.
Yeah.
Then about 12 or 15 years ago, I went down to VA. They gave me a test. And the doctor was a Marine Corps doctor. And he read my, resume. He said, where did you fall through the cracks in the wall? He said, you should have got it way the hell better than you. So he got me I don't have to worry about the money now.
Well, that's a good feeling. Not quite the same feeling as surviving the war, but a pretty good feeling.
Well, he figured he said a hell of a lot more.
Yeah.
You know, and he got me where I should have got it.
Well, I find it funny, Tony Julian, that you were injured in the leg very severely and became a mailman and walked the route for how many years?
15 years.
Wow.
But I had a sign a paper that I couldn't work more than 8 hours a day. If I never worked overtime because it'd be bother my resume. So then when did I get discharged? Oh, and it's February 14. It was on. I got discharged in New York City. You know,
you had gone all across from Oakland all the way across to New York.
I went all over.
Wow.
I was in there for 42 months, and I was no longer than 42 months in any one place at a time. Mm-hmm. The 4th Division went through 42 combat battles, or not 42 combat battles. Every time you got signed to a different platoon or this, but you were in the same company all the time. And yeah, I'm forgetting where I'm going now.
Well, I'm going to take a break because I want to ask you about casualties, particularly on those islands. They had to have been just beyond horrific. But we'll get to that in just a minute. Bob Cordaro with you on the eponymous show. We're going to take a break. We've got Charlie Tansits, Tony Julian here, just having a conversation about World War II, but we're going to get a little bit into life when they came back. And I think maybe that contrast with the way things are today might interest a lot of you. I know it does me. We'll be back.
WILK.
Well, that's the great Andrews Sisters, Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, and we got two Bugle Boys here today. Bob Cordaro with you on the eponymous show, and we're joined today, so fortunate, by my friends Charlie Tansits, U.S. Army medic, with Patton's Army, including in the Battle of the Bulge, and Tony Julian, U.S. Marine Corps medic, 4 different island landings in the Pacific Theater, including Iwo Jima, where he was wounded. We did not get, he's okay, but he didn't feel well, George Partash from Sugar Notch, who was going to join us, so we'll maybe try and get him today. He was on the USS Saratoga in the Pacific Theater. You know, guys, and somebody texted in about this. You mentioned, Tony, about getting in touch with this girl in Oakland. Well, there was no cell phones. There was no anything. But somehow, people of your generation managed to stay in touch with friends and family and all the people you were in the war with and so forth. I mean, how has things changed? I mean, you didn't have any problem getting in touch with anybody, did you, Charlie?
Well, if you ask somebody a question, it'd take you 2 weeks to get an answer.
There you go.
But I mean, the mail worked.
Yeah. But it took like 5 or 6 days to get over here, and then another 6 or 7 days to get back.
Yeah.
Then you forget what the hell you asked them in the first place.
But now, what do you think? Just from what you've observed, I know you guys aren't social media guys. What do you think about social media and the cell phones and all the things that we have today? Are they positive in your mind, or are they negative?
Well, I just can't get over that you can talk to somebody overseas on a telephone and see them at the same time you're at the present time. I mean, the phones today are terrific. I mean, I can't get over that.
Tony, you use a cell phone now, right?
Yeah, they ain't worth a shit.
I got it.
I'll tell you, I got to tell you this thing. When I belonged in the Marine Corps, I used to get a magazine, and every month, this fellow from California read an article about me, and his father was my lieutenant in at the war, and he got in touch with me, and he come out to see me for my 100th birthday just last week. Kept in touch with me all these years.
How about that?
That's the whole world.
Yeah. Well, how does it feel to Charlie? You're 101, going on 102. How does it feel, Charlie Tansits?
I don't know. I don't know how anything feels. That's where a short memory comes in handy.
Yeah.
You just shrug your shoulders and carry on.
You know, and I said, whenever I'm with Charlie, he decides if he's going to give you a straight answer or not. Tony, how about you? You just turned 100.
Right.
And had a nice celebration.
Okay.
I mean, your reflections at reaching 100 years old.
Right. What did I think about reaching?
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to make it.
Yeah.
No kidding, because aches and pains and everything. What I went through was a nightmare. I used to tell everybody, I'm not going to make it.
Yeah.
Tell me you're going to make it. Who the hell else will take you? My son-in-law. Nobody else will take you.
Is that what Larry Nicholas would tell you? Yeah. I love it. I love it. But you've seen all this. You've experienced all this. Do you, as you observe life today, how does that compare for you first, Tony Julian? How does that compare the way things were when you were growing up?
I'll tell you, when I was growing up, things were tough. During the Depression and everything, nobody had nothing. Everybody shared everything they had. And next door neighbor, you'd invite you for dinner. Things are altogether different today. The people don't know what they missed when I was a kid growing up.
Yeah.
They were tougher, but there were better days.
Well, for you, Charlie Tansits, you grew up during the Depression. You were in your teen years. What do you remember about the Depression?
Well, I was fortunate. My father was a tailor, and he had his own shop. And if we were poor, I didn't know it.
Yeah.
Well,
and I hear that most often, that we were poor, we just didn't know it.
But everybody else was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, was there ever a time, Charlie Tansits, when there might not be food on the table, or you were worried about that, or were you sort of blissfully?
I went through life not worrying.
Yeah.
But my advice to anybody living today, if you're going to do something, do it now. If you're going to live it up now. Don't save nothing for the end.
Amen. We're gonna take a quick break for the Bloomberg Money Minute, and we're gonna come back with Tony Julian and Charlie Tansits after this Bloomberg Minute. All right, we're back. Bob Cordaro with you, and the eponymous show continues. And we're going to head to the news, but we're going to go into a second hour with my friends Charlie Tansits, 102 years old, and my friend Tony Julian, 100 years old, both World War II veterans. But we're getting into much more because these guys have seen a lot, as they say. And we want to explore that because you don't get this opportunity too often. Bob Cordaro with you. Paula Degnan's got the news. We'll be back with hour number 2 after that.
WILK FM HD 1 of Boca.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Take it away. It did. And we're back to talk with two men who lived through that infamy and the battle to save freedom on this planet. Charlie Tansits, U.S. Army medic from the East Mountains section of Scranton, fought with and was a medic with Patton's Army in the Battle of the Bulge included. And 100-year-old Tony Julian, U.S. Marine Corps medic from Scranton as well. He participated in 4 landings in the Pacific Theater during World War II until he was shot by a sniper and survived on the island of Iwo Jima. And a special remembrance, he's going to be hopefully with us, and I could talk to him soon, but he fell ill yesterday. 97-year-old George Partash of Sugar Notch, who was a hydraulic specialist on the USS Saratoga aircraft carrier, also in the Pacific Theater. And he was on that ship when it suffered 5 direct hits from kamikaze pilots, 123 killed, 192 wounded, and 36 aircraft on the USS Saratoga destroyed. So we were talking about it, and Tony, we were talking about it on the break. You told me a couple of things about the 4th Marine Division that I don't know that people know. One of the most battle-tested groups, well, the most battle-tested group in history.
Yes, they did more invasion. They were in service for 42 months. They did more invasion and 42 more combat in 42 months than all the history of the Marine Corps.
Wow.
In all their years they were.
And it was savage, brutal fighting. You were talking about, body parts and guys' bodies floating and just a nightmare.
In my outfit was a Fleet Marine Force. They were the infantry of the Navy. You know what I mean? They did all the fighting. And then later on, the Army come in over and they take over. But the Fleet Marine Force was #1 fighting. And close fighting, hand to hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how I survived it, honestly, God.
See, that is the amazing thing. So you're on the island. You are literally face to face with the enemy.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, some of the foxholes I jumped in, there was already dead Japs in them, and I jump on top of them.
Wow.
You know, and have to get the hell out of here. You know.
Remarkable. I mean, were you scared during this?
Was I scared? You know, it's a funny thing to say, but when you go through training and you absorb what you were supposed to do, you learn it. You're doing what you were learning to do without even knowing you were doing it. You understand? Everything comes right up front.
So, Tony Julian, a lot of the people I talked to that were in different conflicts, I mean, hardcore type fighting like you're describing, they said that one of the most important things to them, you weren't thinking about the country, you're thinking about your fellow soldiers. Yeah. And that was what everybody focused on. Your pals that were in your company, in your small groups. You
became really one group. Like I had this one corporal. Whenever they called for a corpsman, he'd stay with me and watch over me while I went out to get the milk. He was like my bodyguard. We became like real close.
Tony, what level of skill would you have? I mean, by the end of these 4 attacks on the islands to push the Japanese off, you must have seen every horrific injury, wound, you name it. I mean, literally guts coming out, everything you saw.
Well, here's what it is. We had to stay up front. We were attached to a rifle platoon. We treated what we could treat, like first aid treating wounds and small things. If there's something we couldn't handle, we'd have them stay there, and then they get taken back to a doctor back in the field.
Yeah.
But we just took care of what we could take care of. Like we weren't doctors.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think we do no more for the doctors than they do today.
And you had to save them and stabilize them so they could go back.
That's right. Another thing I got to tell you. Before you hit the beach, you had a thing loaded with Christian Brothers brandy.
Really?
And so, you could try to give them that to give a little stimulant. I never waited till we hit the beach. I gave it to the guys before we hit the beach to give you the stimulant before.
I would believe that. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, just when you think about, and I talked to you about being scared, when you think about the raw courage of your generation and of the people in the 4th Marine Division in particular, they were facing death.
Yeah.
Everybody knew that was probably a better possibility than surviving. How did you go forward?
God pushed me. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here today. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
He was in my footsteps pushing me. And a lot of prayer at home with the family and everything.
It's I think, now, was there, and I want to ask the both of you, was there a movie that gave you at least a little bit of the sense of what you lived through, that you saw, a movie or anything that could have captured some of what you experienced, Tony Julian?
No, the movies couldn't show what we felt in our heart, like what we went through.
Yeah.
You couldn't pick that out of the movie star.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like on one of the movies, they had a Red Cross in the sick bay. Even at the Marine Corps League, they have a museum there.
A beautiful museum, yeah.
Did you see the Red Cross on the Marines never wore a Red Cross.
Yeah.
I told the guys that shouldn't be there. But they never showed a Red Cross on their uniform or nothing.
Because they would target you.
Oh, yeah, they were targets.
I mean, just like officers, they would target you with the Red Cross.
Same thing.
Well, the Marine Corps League honored you before your 100th birthday. And this great Northeast detachment of the Marine Corps League up on East Mountain, that must have been a special event.
Yes, it was. That was good.
I went to their SOS breakfast for Father's Day every year for years, and people don't know what a gem we have up on East Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
Because you mentioned a museum. The museum is, like, fantastic. Those dioramas down the basement showing the various battles.
Right.
Remarkable. Charlie Tansits, so you're getting the soldiers after the battlefield medics like Tony Julian are trying to stabilize them.
Yep.
You had to have seen just so much pain and everything.
Oh, but yeah, that's what the medics is all about.
Yeah. Well, all right. So stepping away from the war, you guys talked about growing up and how things were different and the Depression. Charlie Tansits, you told me a story while we were at Lake Scranton about being at Lake Scranton and walking across that lake in the winter, and one time it didn't work out so well.
I went to St. Mary's. I went to parochial school. And at that time, when you went to parochial school at Easter, Holy Thursday and Good Friday, every class had a half-hour adoration. Well, the half-hour adoration that we were spending was up at Lake Scranton. There was two brothers that lived next door to us, and my brother and I. There were four of us. So we went walking up, and we walked all the way across Mountain Lake, all through the ice, then went up to Lake Scranton, get on the dam, get on the lake by the dam, and walked all the way down the middle and get down there to the pavilion down there. And down at the pavilion down there, there's water comes in there, so that water never freezes, and we fell in there. I got pulled two of them out, and I couldn't get my brother out. And at that time, you could drive around the lake, and there happened to be a guy driving around there with his wife and kid at an afternoon. It was about 3 o'clock. And when he saw that, he drove right into the water. Wow. Well, he broke through the ice to get into the water and pulled my brother out. And they took us down, and we lived on East Mountain Road. And when this guy took my brother out of the back of the car, he carried him into the house. And my mother saw the guy carry my brother out, and she just caved in and passed right out.
Wow.
And they took the two young kids down to St. Mary's Hospital, and everything turned out all right.
Well, we're going to take a break, but something else that you mentioned, your wife had worked at St. Mary's Hospital, and a story that you had told me. We're going to talk about that when we come back. And then there's a caller who wants to ask something about Patton. Are you willing to talk about your old friend George Patton?
Really, no.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll be back. Charlie Tansits, Tony Julian, our guests. These two centenarians are with us, telling us about the war, World War II, and life. We'll be back. We are back. Bob Cordaro with you. And that is Spike Jones. Charlie Tansits knew it immediately. It was called Der Führer's Face, mocking Hitler appropriately. Back in 1942, we are joined by 102-year-old Charlie Tansits, U.S. Army medic under Patton's Army in the Battle of the Bulge, including the Battle of the Bulge, from the East Mountain section of Scranton, and 100-year-old Tony Julian, U.S. Marine Corps medic, also from Scranton, who was with the 4th Marine Division, a medic who saw 4 different island landings, including Iwo Jima back in World War II, where he was wounded. So you have a story, Charlie Tansits, which one of my dear friends, Joe Biden, relates to one of my dear friends, Joe Biden. But your wife worked at the St. Mary's Hospital.
She didn't work there. She was in training.
Oh, she was in training there. and very possibly when Joe Biden was born.
Right.
That's a Jewish school or something now?
Now it is, yeah.
Yeah, but that was a hospital up in that.
Yes, it was. I worked there. That was the first job I ever got. The first job I ever had when I got out of high school in 1939. I worked there from 1939 to 42 when I was drafted.
How about that?
When I got that job, I was an operating room orderly. I worked in their operating room there. And my wife was in training. She was in training there from 40 to 43.
And you met her there.
Right. In fact, when I got out of the Army, I had to wait for her to come out because she was in the Navy.
Oh, really?
She was a Navy nurse.
Oh, my gosh.
So,
where was she stationed?
Philadelphia.
Wow.
I always said she fought the Battle of Philadelphia. She worked in the Naval Hospital down in Philadelphia for that.
Oh my gosh! So, and then you meet, you fall in love. You're married for 60 years.
Yes. 60 is the best years I ever had.
Yeah. Amazing. She passed. We lost her in 2007. And Tony Julian, you were also had a long marriage. When were you married?
1947.
Wow. So you were done with your girl in every port, and you settled down.
Yep. You get tired of running around. You got to settle down someday.
So, and you were married for 47 years yourself.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. So, both of you come back from the war, and I had mentioned to you a while back how, what was different that you saw or you felt, and we really didn't get a chance to get into that. What was different, Charlie Tansits, from your perspective, after all you saw in Europe during the war, and you come back home, did you feel different, or was it the same?
Well, I don't know about if it feels different. Well, the first thing you had to do was try to find a job.
Yeah.
And with everybody coming out there, it was almost impossible to find a job.
You had 10 million people coming back.
Yep. But I found a job. I was, at that time, Stored Fissers was taken over by Spiegel's. And they hired a lot of ex-GIs there. So I got a job there.
In the Store and Pfister building downtown?
Yep. And they had an upholstery department there. And I was going to be an upholsterer. So I was an upholsterer for about 5 years. Then I quit there and I got a job at the Eureka. And I worked at the Eureka for about 4 or 5 years.
Down on Dixon Avenue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after they started...
What did Eureka do? It wasn't the vacuum company. It was...
No, they made trading stamps. It was a printing company.
Wow.
And then when they closed there, I got a job at Art Print. And I was there for over 20 years.
Art Print down near Old Forge?
Well, actually, they moved from Scranton to Old Forge.
Okay.
When that Art Print started, they started on the Brown Avenue, out at the plaque section. And I worked out there for 20 years. And I quit there and I went to Communicraft. And I was there for 5 years when I retired.
Were you a professional printer, Charlie Tansits?
Yeah, I was a printing pressman.
So, I mean, that was when literally you're doing typesetting, you're doing...
No.
No?
This is litho.
Okay.
I was a pressman. I ran a press. Litho isn't typesetting.
Okay.
So I did that for 25 years.
And did you retire from that profession?
Yep, in 1983.
How about that?
And start walking the lake ever since.
And it was my great fortune to meet you. And Tony Julian, you became a mail carrier in what year?
1986.
Oh, you started late. Okay.
Yeah, when Capitol Records moved out of town.
So you were with Capitol Records for a number of years then
30
after.
years.
Oh, wow. I was getting the impression it was a much shorter. So they were in Southside, right?
Right.
And then where did they move from then, or is that when they moved from Southside?
They went on strike. And once they went on strike, they moved to California.
And because I knew we had record companies around here, right until just a few years ago, in fact, up in Oliphant.
Specialty Records took over. Remember Specialty?
Yeah.
They're still some kind of a company now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Do you remember some of the music when you came out was it 78s after World War II? What was the record they were pressing down at Capitol? Was it 78s or 33s?
Yeah, but 78, 33. We were pressing for other company. You know, different labels. We make the records, we put their label on. Like Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole, and all that.
And what was your job at Capitol Records?
I was a presser.
A presser. Now, in 1986, you're not a young kid. And
what?
You're not a young kid in 1986.
Not a young kid, no.
So Tony Julian, you decide and have an opportunity to become a mail carrier.
Yeah.
And I mean, we always looked up to our mailmen, always. And what neighborhood did they assign you to?
Well, I was a floater at first. I delivered mail from Avoca down up to Dunmore, this side of the river. I knew everybody's name. This side of the river.
Wherever they needed somebody, the floater went.
I love floating around, meeting different people. I enjoyed that job. When I used to punch out some nights, I'd say to the guys, I'm working for nothing today because the job is so good.
That's amazing. All right, well, Jim, we got to take a break. I just looked up at the clock. We're going to do the weather. We're going to come back talking with both Tony Julian and Charlie Tansits, and we've got the official word. They are centenarians. We'll be back.
The following is a commercial announcement.
Well, we have another 20 minutes or so with these men. Charlie Tansits of East Mountain, 102 years old. He was an Army medic with George Patton's Army. And 100-year-old Tony Julian, U.S. Marine Corps medic, also from Scranton, who participated in 4 island landings in the Pacific Theater. Really just incredible. And we were talking about, just your lives in general, which is sort of more just as interesting. So both of you went through your careers. And Charlie Tansits, how long have you been retired now, as they say?
Since 83.
83.
Count them up, I don't know.
So, 1983, you retire, and you were walking the lake until like a year ago.
Yes.
And you still do a little bit of that.
Well, yeah. I can walk down as far as the dam.
Okay. Which is farther than most people could.
Well, Actually, I walk down there, I'm pushing the wheelchair because I know I'm going to have to ride back.
Yeah.
No, I can walk about 2 or 3 blocks.
Yeah. Well, Charlie, what to you is the most, I guess, significant difference in people, in the country, in what you experience from the time growing up to today?
I don't know what it is with people today. Christ, this outfit doesn't like that outfit, and nobody likes each other anymore. They can't even have civil words for one another without snapping at one another. In my day, you could talk to people. Today it seems as though everybody wants to be right. And most of them are wrong.
Well, Charlie, you told me a funny story at the lake, and you had mentioned it here today. You said that you were married to a Republican.
That's right. My wife was a registered Republican. Her whole family were Republicans, but they're not all Republicans now. But she never. I had a brother-in-law that we were raised together, and my wife was really close to her sister, and she was a Republican, and my buddy was a dynamo Democrat. And I swear he would have never married her if she didn't change her from Republican to Democrat. My wife always asked me if I wanted her to change. I said, no, you don't have to change. Everybody has an opinion. Just keep it to yourself. No.
Tony, Julian, tell me from your perspective, what's different about life today that you observe versus when you grew up and when you were a young man and as you came to retirement?
Well, the difference today and how it was years ago, 100% different. Everybody loved one another years ago. Share everything you have. The next door neighbor, if you didn't have a refrigerator or freezer, they give you the ice cubes out of the freezer and stuff like. Very close. All the kids are different today.
Yeah.
All the kids are different. The ones that miss being poor, they missed a lot. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
They're different. All the kids are.
I guess the struggle, maybe you'd be saying it in another way, the struggle that people had to overcome and confront and overcome was what made them stronger and what kept them grounded, I guess.
Yeah. What kept them stronger? I don't know. What can I tell you? Like when I was growing up, I had a couple of people died, kids, and they were putting them in an orphanage. My mother took them in and raised them until they got married. Like years ago, they put kids in the orphanage when their parents died. My mother just took them off the street.
And you know what surprises me, Charlie, and from everything I've heard of the way things were, people had less and gave more.
Yeah, I would say that.
Yes, that's about it. More than they had less.
I just remember seeing, well, we've got to take a break, but I just remember seeing parties and hearing stories, and you knew everybody was poor.
Yeah.
But somehow there was always enough. And I mean, even some people had to worry about there being enough, but it didn't keep them from enjoying life, how difficult things were.
Well, during this time of the year, we had big gardens, and that was during the Depression. My father would fill our wagons up, and then we'd go around the neighborhood selling things for a quarter for this, $50 for that. Sometimes you come home, and my father would say, Somebody poorer than us, I didn't make any money. Just to raise our own chickens, turkeys, and everything.
Yeah.
Rabbits, you name it.
We're talking with two guys who not only faced World War II, but who saw life over their 100-year spans of their lifetimes. We're going to come back with them and talk a little more. Charlie Tansits, Tony Julian on the Bob Cordaro Show. We'll be right back.
Hello, Yankee brothers. This is your Japanese sister, the voice of truth. The voice reaches out to you from the peacefulness of Japan, laden as always with love, but today also with sorrow, because of what your superiors are making you do. This morning they are forcing you to attempt the impossible.
Is that Tokyo Rose?
Brothers?
Yeah, I guess so.
The impossible.
And no accent.
For it is impossible for you to dislodge our forces on Iwo Jima.
Iwo Jima?
Take it away.
1942, Vera Lynn. There'll be bluebirds on the white cliffs of Dover. You remember that song, Charlie?
Yeah. The door yesterday.
Yeah. How about you, Tony Julian? Do you remember that song? Did you hear the song she was just singing? There'll be bluebirds on the white cliffs of Dover.
Right.
Now, before that, they were playing Tokyo Rose.
Yeah.
Now, this was the famous woman who spoke unaccented English and you were continually bombarded with her propaganda on behalf of the Japanese. Do you remember hearing? Did you hear Tokyo Rose?
Tokyo Rose, yep.
Oh my gosh! What was the reaction when you would hear, when the men would hear this?
Laughed like hell.
Because he was just saying, as we came back, we played a tape. Mr. Paul found it, my executive producer, where she was saying, "You'll never dislodge our troops in Iwo Jima."
Yeah.
I'm guessing you might have heard that before you went onto the island.
Yeah.
Wow.
You just ignored her, more or less.
Yeah.
We didn't look forward to listening to her.
Yeah, Tokyo Rose. Oh my gosh! And think of the things, not only psychological and what they faced, but the psychological warfare that the Japanese engendered and undertook.
One thing I got to tell you, this one Jap on Saipan, he was surrendered, and you put the white flag up. Don't shoot me, He said, I have a brother living in Brooklyn. That's all. The Japs were here and they're over there, too.
Yeah. And, last week, we were talking about, we play a lot of historical clips, but the apology that Ronald Reagan made for the internment of Japanese citizens in the United States during World War II. Japanese Americans, by the way, during World War II. So yeah, he had a brother in, and how was his English? Good enough, I guess.
Yeah. Well, didn't they give him a supplement?
Yeah. It was a couple $1,000s, but they made the point of apologizing for that mess. But so this soldier, he says, I've got a brother in Brooklyn, and obviously that had to have an impact, right?
Yeah.
Did you took him in and?
Well, we used to know some words like to try to get the Japs friendly with it. When we hit the islands, a lot of them commit suicide. They were jumping over cliffs and everything. They didn't want to be taken prisoner.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of civilians on them islands. Mm-hmm. They kill the whole family before we get to them.
Because they didn't want to be conquered by the Japanese either on any of the islands you were on.
Well, they were told that we were going to murder them. They were better off committing suicide.
Oh, my gosh. War ain't beanbag, right? War is not beanbag, that's for sure.
my doctor is half Japanese. But when I go to see him, I say konnichiwa. You know what that means?
I know it's a greeting.
How are you today?
How about that? Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
Fantastic. All right. So you guys have had, between Germans and Japanese, whom you were involved in the fighting with, all of that goes out of the way after a certain period of time. Or does it, Charlie Tansits? Did you sort of forgive the Germans and say, okay, that's all's fair in love and war, and we move on now?
You might as well say forget it, but you can't go to each one of them and apologize.
Yeah.
I don't apologize to nobody.
But as a general rule, you got over it after how many years? I mean, how many years did it take after all the brutality you saw?
I don't know. Add them up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But as you sit here today, you don't have any bitterness towards the Germans?
I don't have any bitterness against anybody. Just Donald Trump.
He was dying to get that in because he knows.
I had to get that in.
Tony Julian, now you, when you look back at it, you mentioned now your doctor's Japanese American, or at least half Japanese American. How long, and did you have bitterness towards the Japanese after what you saw and what you went through?
Very, very bitterness against them because I saw what they were doing to our men. You would not believe the things they did. And it took a good many years to get. I won't even buy a Japanese product, or not that in the beginning.
When did you find that was going away for you?
Once I got this Japanese doctor.
And he took darn good care of you, right? Well, gentlemen, as we wrap up, and we got a little bit of advice from Charlie Tansits, so I want advice from you. What do you have to tell not only my generation, I'm an old guy too in a lot of ways. What do you have to tell the American people today, the people in Northeast Pennsylvania? What should they know from you, from your years of experience, Tony Julian?
Well, to get along with everybody, you just don't. Everybody has a good and a bad part of them. Just take in the good things you can find in them, the bad parts of them, push them aside, and that way you'll get along with everybody.
Yeah. All right, we're going to come back. We got to go to Bloomberg Money Minute. We're going to come back with a quick close. Beyond grateful to you guys for being here. Bloomberg Money Minute, and then we'll be back.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
Bing Crosby with that song, and it was in memory of men like this, Tony Julian and Charlie Tansits, hoping and praying and wishing, but knowing they just might not make it home for Christmas. Charlie Tansits, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Honored with your presence always, and you were great. Tony Julian, fantastic. So great to be with you.
Same here.
All right, my honor again, as it always has been. These centenarians showed us what life was like, what World War II was like. We benefit from their experience. We'll go back to the regular stuff after the news, but this was great.
Good show, Bob.
Yeah, my pleasure. Fantastic.